Boys and girls, your attention, please.
Hello and welcome back inside the Park for May for podcast number 939, the Spanish Grand Prix. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now!
You know what we do on race weekends?
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
That's what we do. You may not want us to do that, but that's what we do on race weekends. Before doing that, of course, I have to go introduce my co-host. You know him.
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy.
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charsley, the International.
It's Paul Charsley, the sporting manager of the Heart of Racing Aston Martin team and IMSA. He just got back literally mere minutes ago from Detroit, where you had a finish equaling result in P8. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Yes, it is. We're
Yeah.
going to actually exceed our best result so far. That's what I told Ross and Roman. I said, I'm guaranteeing it, but equaling it's okay. It was okay.
Yeah.
It was a difficult track for us, so actually P8 was actually pretty good. It's pretty bumpy track, that Detroit. Maybe not our friend, the bumps right now. So we're trying to figure all that out. But yeah, and then straight on there today, we were. I wasn't there obviously, but testing at Watkins Glen. So that was hopefully
Nice.
that seemed to be going pretty good. So looking forward to going there.
Yeah.
More tracks suited to a Valkyrie V12, you know,
Yes.
rather than a little street circuit with jumps on them. Yeah.
And then in a few weeks, you got Le Mans coming up.
Yeah. Just next Monday, I'm leaving for Paris and heading to Le Mans. Excited. It's
Going
be
to
a
Paris.
big week.
Oh, that is going to be a big week. Very big week.
Yeah, it's nuts.
I'd love to be sat somewhere along the Mulsanne Strait to hear that V12.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing it on the Mulsanne Strait. Hopefully I get over there. Usually I'm burrowed in the garage, but I got to try and figure a way of doing that at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'm excited about Le Mans. That's super exciting, and that's good. Hey, Paul, also, Aston Martin did a deal with Lego. They're going to make a Lego Valkyrie, and all I want to know about that, Paul, is that Lego Valkyrie going to have the Heart of Racing logo on it?
Who knows? I do not
better.
know. I would imagine.
It should.
If it's the LMH version, then sure.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Someone actually makes some kind of decal kit and like they tell you all the things to buy so you can actually build it and directions. But if there's a real kit coming out, that's even more exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting.
Yeah. There's models coming and now we've got merchandise. It's like we're a real team.
Yeah, got merch. It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting times. Almost as exciting as the Spanish Grand Prix. You know where we were? Barcelona! Yes, Barcelona. And it wasn't without
Controversy,
Paul. Lots of controversy.
There was a whole bucket full right at the end there, wasn't
Yes, there was a whole lot of controversy at the end, the last six laps or so. We'll get into that when we review the teams. First, I want to do a little formation lap. What was everyone talking about going into this weekend, Paul? It had to be the Flexi Wings. Why wouldn't it be the Flexi Wings, right?
it? Yeah.
I mean,
it wasn't the tires this time.
Yeah, it wasn't the tires. It was the Flexi Wings. After all, Zach Brown, hinting that all the lobbying by Red Bull to get this regulation passed and that evil, horrible Christian Horner and bully Max Verstappen, and it was a complete galactic waste of time and money. And because it didn't mean a hill of beans to McLaren, they were still dominant at Barcelona. Yada, yada, yada. But all the talk really was about who would be impacted by the Flexi Wings regulations, if they would. Zach intimating that Red Bull was basically the driving force between the lobbying, and McLaren still looked dominant. So it was sort of a guffaw, moment for McLaren,
Perhaps
which
it
was
was a
great.
red herring that was their advantage all along.
Yeah, right. For me, I'm wondering, given some of the struggles I saw in the midfield, if the bigger impact wasn't for some of the midfield teams.
I mean, it could be, right? I mean, they're less able to adapt the smaller the team is, right? So for sure, it could be.
Yeah, I was thinking in particular. I mean, it could be track specific. Maybe this track just wasn't friendly.
Not friendly. Not friendly
to Williams, and maybe so. But boy, they really looked to be struggling all weekend. You know,
they did, but they know it going in, so it's always interesting.
Yeah, they kind of intimated it going in.
They obviously know their foibles already.
Yeah, right. Yeah, maybe they do. Okay, fair enough. That's their foibles. So let's jump into the race. Let's talk about the race. We're going to start at the sharp end, at the very sharp end, which happens to be a nice shade of papaya orange, with McLaren Oscar Piastri, a P1. This is one of those. This is him. You know, it takes me back to the movie. He's got a knife. Knife. That's not a knife. This is a knife, you know.
Crocodile Dundee?
Yeah, reminds me of that. Okay. So it's like, Lando's got a knife. That's not a knife. This is a knife. I mean, Oscar was clearly on it, right? You know, and Lando had provisional pole, but that final lap during qual from Oscar was just, you know, spectacular. Anyway, he converted his fourth pole position into a commanding victory, strengthening his championship lead, trying to put his foot on the neck of that title. Made a good start, fended off Verstappen's early challenge in turn one, and then basically, wasn't a lot to talk about at his race other than he just executed a flawless two-stop strategy. He looked great. And despite that late safety car bunching up the field, I thought, well, this could get spicy, and it did for other reasons, but not really for Oscar. Stayed composed and nailed it on the restart and took his fifth win of the season. And I just thought his pace, tire management, everything were key to executing there. You know, and I kind of just feel like he's saying, look, at this point, I'm going to have to be the guy to beat, and that means Lando and anyone else. Yeah.
I mean, he definitely was in control, and he only went as fast as he needed to do. When he needed to pull a gap, he pulled the gap.
Yeah.
I mean, as we said before, he's kind of like very like a metronome. You know, he doesn't get flustered. We know that.
Yeah.
He doesn't get too emotional, and that's serving him very well in execution now. What we saw in the past years was we saw obviously lots of performances like that, but we also saw where he's just off a little bit, and he just seems up every weekend. Sometimes Lando can be really up too, but
a little more peak and valley though.
Yeah, I just haven't seen a drop in Piastri's level this season in total.
Yeah.
Which is what
I haven't either.
Champions do, right?
Yeah, it is. It just he's just got, you know, no matter how you measure it up, it's his fifth win of the season. He's just got a real champion performance going on this year. He just does. Yeah.
Stays out of the flustering, the other things that his teammates
doesn't get red mist and run into George Russell. You know,
he doesn't do that.
Right.
Always a good move too. Yeah.
That's always good.
I mean, you can't fault him. You know, everyone says, "Oh, he doesn't have a massive personality." Well, that's okay. You know, he doesn't. Some people don't need to show their personality when they're at the racetrack. You know,
right.
Because they're in a different mindset, and that's definitely something he is. Like I said before about like Leclerc's getting up on the game for Monaco because it's his home track, and we saw Alonso, you know, trying to do everything and anything because he's in front of swing. Oscar is not like that. He's at the same level every single time because that's all he cares about. It's not everything around him. It's being in the car and getting everything out of the car and understanding the tire and how to have the best result possible out of the car he has.
Yeah, it's a great point, Paul, because it's almost it's a singular focus. Mm-hmm. One thing, winning the title. It's a singular focus. And you see that in Max in the last four titles. I mean, it just becomes an obsessive singular focus. You know, Max, he didn't want to get in the Netflix junk, didn't want to do that, didn't want to do the interviews. And, you know, he's here to race and win races, and it's that singular focus that I see in Oscar too. for sure. You know, Lando didn't have a miserable weekend, delivered a strong performance, ends up in P2, couldn't match Piastri's pace here at Barcelona. He lost a place to Verstappen at the start. He fought back, had a well-timed two-stop strategy, reclaimed second. Safety car restart saw him close the gap to Piastri, but he ended up settling in for a P2, and it was a great McLaren 1-2 finish. The first 1-2 finish in Spain since 98. Hakkinen and Coulthard, I think Sky Sports said, which is pretty amazing. Clean race. You know, he's consistent, but not as consistent as Oscar. And he kind of said, they asked him about getting passed by Max. Is that really what kind of put paid to his race? And he said, you know, he didn't think so, but what he said it did do is offered him fewer options on race strategy, when to push, not to, etc. You know, in his words, it may have limited his options, I think is what he said.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously not favorable to let Max by, right?
Right,
I mean, he gets in your way, he holds things up, as rightly so. It stops your program of how to work the tires and have the tires in the right place at the right time for right length of time, because you still got to get around Max, and that definitely sticks in your craw, I'd imagine. I don't know. We know Lando is fully capable of beating Piastri on a good day.
Yeah.
And he could do it multiple days if he can get there. But the qualifying is super important. As we said, I think the qualifying is the most important thing those guys can do all year to differentiate themselves from their teammate without causing controversy or controversy.
Right.
I mean, I'm not discounting that Lando can win the title, but
no,
he's got to do some different things, or know how to do the repeat kind of focus that he had at Monaco. And Piastri had more than him this weekend. Yeah,
it's that consistency, like you said, that metronomic consistency you just got to get to.
I mean, we're all different personalities. We get to places our own way, right? The Tommy Burns of the world somehow got to Formula One. You know, but that was the reason he never stayed in Formula One. You know, it's like everyone's got their own way of doing things, and sometimes it's a short-lived thing, and sometimes it's not, or sometimes it can always work in your favor in this certain situation, but over a longevity purpose, it maybe not. So we'll just have to see if Lando can do the Rosberg kind of thing, which is kind of turn it around and don't let the outside stuff get in your head or distract you. So you can actually be, you know, the equal of your teammate week after week.
Yeah, for sure. Talking about Ferrari, you have Charles Leclerc in P3, Lewis down in P6. Leclerc secured really what I would consider kind of an unexpected podium, if I'm honest. Capitalized on that late safety car, starting strong. Overtook Russell, but then struggled to match the McLaren's pace. And then he had that switch to soft tires for the final stint. That paid off, allowing him to overtake Verstappen on the restart, though, you know, they did have the contact as he was avoiding the marbles or the dirty side of the track. The stewards called it a racing incident, said it was just, you know, one of those unavoidable racing incidents. And, you know, Leclerc's opportunistic drive, and I mean, he was just look great in a car that wasn't really interested in being on the podium, and ends up being Ferrari's only highlight of the weekend. On that coming together, I'm going to reference Anthony Davis a couple times in this podcast, because I think his review of all of the incidents that happened, and we'll get to the George and Max later, but as far as Charles and George or Max go, I think Ant's right. You know, he had some tools on his SkyPad that he was drawing and showing that there was no movement right by Max. But you could see that Charles was drifting over left, and Charles kind of even admitted it after the race, that he was trying to push him over a little and wanted to get back on the line. He wasn't on the line, and he was trying to move over a little bit. Yeah, as you would do. I would. If I was Charles, I'd do the same thing. I'd try to crowd Max over a little, get me off the dirty, get me back on the line as I was going down into the corner. So he said he kind of admitted that he did that. So I don't think that was Max's fault.
No.
Interesting, the stewards reviewed it and didn't penalize him. Okay, fair enough, if that's the way that's going to roll. But anyway, we'll get to Max's incident in a minute, but I don't want to heap, blame on Max for this. I think Charles squeezed him and they touched.
Yeah, I didn't even know why it was even questioned that Max had a part in it, really.
No, I don't know.
Looking at it from first view, I was like, okay, well, Charles was just moving over because he didn't want to be compromised by going into the braking zone on the marbles, which obviously would have been a big compromise, right?
Yeah.
And, that's just what you do.
Yeah.
You're going down a straight, heading down to the braking zone. Don't brake till you see the whites of their eyes, kind of stuff with your competitor, and you start moving each other around a little bit. Thing is, with Max, is he won't move.
He's not going to move.
No, right? I mean, some other people may be, oh, geez, he's coming over on me. I'm gonna, because there was more room to move too. But Max is not the guy that's ever going to move.
No, Max knew he had the line.
Yeah, and
so not moving.
There were it's a game of chicken to some degree, and Leclerc was comfortable with there being contact, and Max is always comfortable with there being contact, and that's what happened. So I agree. It is hard racing, but I don't think either one, which way you want to look at it, and obviously Leclerc was the one actually moving over. I don't think it's a penalizable offense, or I hope it's not. Unless it's, really egregious where you're literally trying to run someone off the road, which he wasn't. He was trying to get in his lane, or at least make some room for himself in an uncompromising position for the braking zone.
Yeah, he got his elbows out a little bit.
Yeah, that's good.
As you do.
Yep.
As Max has done. I would do it, Same thing. You have done. Yes. Right. Many times. So, totally agree. But a great race from Charles, ended up in P3. That result, folks, moves Ferrari ahead in the Constructor Championship. So it was a very important move for Charles, and a great race from him. Lewis, tough race. His race was just frustrating, serious pace issues. And he had a decent start, got around Russell, couldn't keep up with Leclerc, had to yield to his teammate early on. Just did not have the pace. And once Charles got around him, Charles was gone. And then he was struggling with tire wear, lost positions to Russell and Hülkenberg at the end, and he narrowly held off Hadjar to finish 6th. He just didn't have any pace, and certainly didn't have the pace of Charles. And I wonder, I didn't hear all of Lewis's comments. Afterward, he was pretty, self-flagellating, saying, they asked, I think, hopefully, you think they'll find out what was wrong with the car. He said, no, probably not. It's just me. He's one of those self-defeating moods. Yeah. And he was upset with himself, as Lewis can get. But I'm curious, because Charles said what was odd for him during the race is that the car's balance completely changed.
Yeah.
The whole balance of the car completely changed on him. And I'm curious if that also happened
when they switched tire compound, or just
I think it was during stints, then all of a sudden the whole car's balance just changed, and is like crazy. And he said it kind of gave the impression that was a dramatic feel in the car of how radically that car changed during stints, different tire compounds. I'm curious if that maybe wasn't going on for Lewis too.
Well, we know for sure that the tire compound was an issue. Yeah. Lewis didn't have the choices of fresh rubber that Charles did, and that hurt him as well. And it will compound it when a car's not quite behaving itself, and you don't have fresh rubber, then you struggle even more, right? So maybe the fresh rubber helped Charles mask those issues, or obviously if the balance of the car changes from one compound to the next, then the team didn't do their work on meeting that compromise on setup, so that there isn't that drastic change, because you focus on one tire, you go to another one, things can change dramatically if you haven't done enough running or got your sums right to fix that. But going back on that, the tire strategy is a big thing, and it was always going to be a big thing here because of the degradation, and the teams. It's not like teams don't know this stuff. And it does confuse me sometimes from weekend to weekend how much tire they use in practices and even in qualifying runs. Yeah. Especially the top tier teams, that probably have some pace in hand. I understand, you throw tires on to, do a quali sim. Even they're actually doing quali sims in qualifying because they're doing a quali sim for the next session sometimes.
Yeah, right.
But I just feel like they don't. Sometimes they just don't manage that tire allocation very well. If you're at a place where, there's no deg, and whatever tires you're going to have plenty, you'll be good. But we knew going into Barcelona that is not the case, and I think some of the teams managed it poorly, and some lucked into it, and some actually managed it, which is what the Ferrari team did with Leclerc, and with saving him some fresh rubber and not going for a second run or going for a run on older rubber. Obviously, if you're a better team, a top team, even like McLaren, that you've got so much pace in hand, you can still out-qualify most teams and get into Q3 without keep running through a bunch of tires. So, we do it in IMSA and WEC, everything. There's a lot of tire management goes on because our tire allocation is tiny compared to Formula One. And you have to learn how to evaluate your car without having low fuel, new rubber runs every time. You've got to use the historics of the data to simulate what it would be like, so you can save that rubber for what really counts is in the race. Formula One is, qualifying is a big part of it. It's a sprint race of a kind, but with all the tire stops, and especially with DRS now, and a track like Barcelona, which is fairly easy to get a run on someone, get past someone. You've got to be very mindful of that stuff. Yeah. And I think they get spoiled by their allocation, and they don't have to think outside the box to be able to evaluate the car running old tires on less fuel, all those kind of things. So
to that point, Paul, it did seem like a few of the teams were sailing awful close to the win this weekend on tire. When you consider that, I think we all kind of knew going into the weekend that the delta between compounds was significant. Maybe if it was 0.3, 4, 5, 7/10, I don't know, pick your number, but it was there. It was significant. But even compounding that there was a delta between used compounds. So a used set of mediums versus new mediums, there was quite a big delta there too.
The power of a fresh rubber was very powerful.
And so, and in that case, when you, you could poke holes in some of those strategies, but I think, and I mentioned it when we get to Hulkenberg, he said, that not doing very well on Saturday actually was the golden ticket because it gave him a lot more tire allocation, and everything was fresh set of rubber, for them. And he was able to run, flat out, and it made a big difference for him. But we'll get to him in a minute. Yes. Mercedes, George Russell, P4, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, DNF. Russell said he was unhappy with himself on lap 1. He said he lost ground to both the Ferraris, but he felt like Charles was reachable if it wasn't for the incident with Max. He thought maybe he could get to Charles to get around him, or at least reachable to have a shot at him. After losing places at the start, he played that long game, clawed back to challenge Hamilton and Verstappen. At the safety car restart, he attempted to, a move on Verstappen into turn 1, which resulted in contact. And here again, I think Ant Davison had this right. And we'll get to the collision then after this with Max when we're reviewing Max. We'll get to that one. But we've talked about Charles Leclerc bouncing into Max. That would have made him mad. And then Max had to run wide, and he lost the spot to Charles, and he was like, he's got to give it back. He hit me, he needs to give the place back, and he didn't. And there was no penalty. So he's mad already. But then he goes into this corner, and George, seeing that opening, left, dives down the inside. And as Ant pointed out, okay, by the rules, you got to be significantly along the side of the guy. Your front axle has to be with their front axle and blah, blah. And he's got to be, significant. And he said there's 3 boxes to tick, and he ticked 2 of them, which qualified for a legit pass. But the third one, he lost the front end of the car. Right. And he wasn't in control of the car, and it slid wide and clouded Max, knocking Max wide, know. And so that's how Ant saw it, and that's how I saw it too when I looked at it and looked at the onboards. And the reality of it is, and we'll get to ceding the position and what that created when we get to Max. But, just as far as the contact with Max going into that corner, I felt like George lost the front end. It happens. I'm not picking on George. Max has lost the front end. They've all lost the front end when they're, braking late and trying to make a move.
Yeah. But they didn't see it as a punishable offense. Yeah. But they also didn't see it as a offense that Max didn't have the right to keep the position, which obviously, I don't know if we're going to get into that later as well. But yeah, it's an interesting thing because the way they have the rules, and as I said, the rules are written, but it really does change, particularly what kind of corner you're in. We've got the left-right chicane corners. How do you get out of the way there and give someone a call? You can't do it, right? Yeah. And in here, when they're talking about, how much is your wheel up? Oh, his wheel's up against the mirror, so Max should have seen the corner. When do you know that's going to happen? And how do you know that's going to happen?
Right. And keep in mind, it's all happening in fractions of seconds.
Fractions of a second. In the heat of the you don't know where and when, and in the corner that car's going to be up against the mirror and everything. So, Max has the right to fight the corner on the outside, and Russell has to give enough room that Max can still make it through the corner too. And if you go into the corner and you're not in control of your car, which you're not if you'll then start understeering off and you make contact, then you certainly don't have a right to take the position at this point.
And like I said, I'm not picking on George because Max has done this. We've talked about this. We've talked about going down late, braking super late, and chucking it into the corner on the inside. Now, lately, Max has been able to make those corners, and that's just kind of Max. But he certainly has lost the front end in the past. Yep. Yeah. And we've talked about that. So I'm not picking on George, but I don't think that was Max's fault. And I could see why it ticked him off,
Yeah, I mean, you got to let these guys have those goes. It was a legitimate passing opportunity.
It was.
You took a legitimate passing maneuver to do it, and it just went a little bit wrong, and there was a little bit of contact. So I don't think it's, penalty worthy, but I also don't think you can then take the position also because Max shouldn't have had to see that, which the scrutineers or whatever you want to call it, the stewards agreed to. Problem is, how do you know what the stewards are going to do and whether you should or shouldn't cede your position or give it up or re-attack? It's really, I don't like this. The team has to figure out what the right thing to do is because the team, honestly, we don't know what the stewards are going to make right or wrong, and it shouldn't be in the team's hands to try and guess because they could guess wrong, which obviously the Red Bull team did, and it basically killed Verstappen's race by second guessing how the stewards had reacted in the past, certainly to Max, I think.
Right.
And I think that it really should be a steward decision in the moment. And they shouldn't just leave it open. It really should be.
It used to be.
You tell us what to do because you're the guys making those decisions. We cannot make it for you or really guess what their decisions are going to be.
Right.
They're all over the place.
I think that, it used to be like when that happened in that corner, Charlie Whiting would have looked at it and said, okay, Toto, or whoever, Mercedes, you got to get the position back.
Right.
And it would happen pretty quickly, right? Mm-hmm. Then they changed, unfortunately, when Charlie died tragically, then they changed and gone through iterations. And now it's this sort of concept that, the race director has noted it. Mm-hmm. And the teams don't know if it's going to go to the steward, but if it does get noted, it most likely is going to the stewards, and then they got to wait for the stewards to figure this out, but the team has the option of doing the right thing and giving a position back, and if they don't, it could go to the stewards, and this doesn't work in a sport that's measured in thousands of seconds in time and at the speed. It just doesn't work. And now that they've got this whole off-site, stewarding crew watching every millisecond of the race and everything, it seems like they'd be a little quicker in saying, okay, look, George lost front of the car, punted Max a little bit, needs to give the position back. That should be a pretty straightforward command back to Mercedes. Yeah. So they can make that, or to Red Bull, so they can make that in real time. I'm not but unfortunately it didn't happen, and this just compounded to the red mist.
Yeah,
But yes,
I think it's a cop out, honestly, by the stewardship to kind
yeah,
of put it on the teams in that place.
I do
It's
too.
a cop out that they don't have to make a quick decision. I mean,
Right,
as you said, there should be enough stewards there to evaluate this thing
should be.
super, and live or die by it. You guys need to come up with a decision very quickly.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, the
agree.
team can see the position if they want, if they think the stewards are going to take 2 laps to figure it out, and by then, if they make the decision against them, then
Yeah,
they lose even more. That's kind of a team decision. But I still think that the stewards should come up with a final decision for the teams whether they should or shouldn't have to see the position,
yeah, I agree.
and work on doing it in a very
Quick
manner,
way. Yep,
which is what
agreed.
happens in IMSA. We get Bo on the radio, or we get messages on my little computer. What if those kind of things have to happen? I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if IMSA can do it, for crying out loud, F1 can do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Kimi Antonelli, DNF, unfortunately, showed some promise. I thought running into the points early, despite run wide at the very start, but that's okay. What looked like a power unit failure to me ended the race prematurely. It's his second DNF in 3 races, which I think should be a little bit of an alarm bell for Mercedes. There's something not happening there, and with their engine. I don't know what's going on and what's happening there. It's disappointing outcome for the rookie because he was on course for a points finish before he had the mechanical. And before that all happened, I was just thinking to myself that everyone is talking about Isaac Hadjar for all of the right reasons. Don't get me wrong. Everyone should be talking about Isaac. But Kimi was running with George in the first part of the race, which is exactly what Mercedes want him to do. This is a rookie who's running with a veteran like George, who is no slouch, by the way.
No.
And Kimi's running there nose to tail in the points, running with George, and has been. And it's really unfortunate. I'm not suggesting people aren't talking about Kimi enough. He's quite a star, and everybody knows that. But it's just unfortunate that a DNF for them. That hurt.
Yeah, that does hurt, especially this long in the engine program that they're having. What was the mechanical issue that took him out before? Was it an engine or was it gearbox? I can't remember.
I thought it was an engine too. I don't remember. No, yeah, sorry, I can't remember.
Yeah, definitely unfortunate, and definitely something we want to look into. I'm sure they will.
Not his fault.
And he's still doing a great job.
Great job.
He is doing a great job.
Yeah, he is. I mean, you can just, and you've seen enough drivers, Paul, and you've coached enough drivers. You can just see the talent oozing from his pores.
The good news for him is he's got plenty of time.
Yeah.
This is his coming out party, but he's definitely going to be right there with them all very quickly.
Yeah, if Mercedes nail
the car,
if Mercedes nail the regulations next year and have an awesome car, they are in good stead with an incredible driver in Kimi, I think. Next, Sauber, Kick Sauber, Nico Hülkenberg, P5, Gabriel Bortoleto, P12. Hülkenberg, for me, was the star of the race, coming from P15 to 5th. And to be fair, I felt like I could see glimpses of this even during Friday's practice and Saturday. You could see where they were showing up in FP1, FP2, and FP3. Right. They were thereabouts. They weren't languishing at the back. And I thought, this is going to be an interesting weekend for Sauber. Didn't expect them to put it in P5, mind you, but I thought they may nip a point in P10, P9, right? And they were doing really well, but a brilliant start from Nico, gained multiple places, ran consistently in the top 10. Post-safety car overtook Hadjar, out-dragged Lewis Hamilton down the straight, was shocking. And it was a great result for them in P5. Verstappen's penalty promoted him to that position, but lifting Sauber off the bottom of the Constructors' Championship. And a big move for the veteran. And like I said, he said that the qualifying not doing quite as well there really was the golden ticket for them during the race with all the fresh rubber.
Yeah, no, absolutely it was. Yeah, I said the rubber, having the right tire for the race was very, very important. But yeah, they've been kind of we gloss over them usually in the race reviews because they've been kind of nothing, the Sauber team. Right. And they came with a lot of updates, and they seem to be working, which is very good news for the Audi group, who are
yes,
going to have their name on the side of their car next year.
I agree.
They're starting to build a team in there that can bring in updates and actually make the car go faster. As I've said before, it's you can't just cast off this year, especially if you're a new team coming in next year, because you have to get the processes right and fix any issues there are in how to create a car that gets better and better. Yeah. To have updates that work, to have the team have the structure that allows the updates that work and don't work to be discarded or pursued. And it seems like they're doing that, which I think is very important. Obviously, it's important to build a good car for the new rules, but for a team like this that is completely restructured and aiming to be a factory car next year, it's really important for them to know and work those systems and make sure they do work and have the right personnel in there that they trust to get them done. So, it's great for them to get the points. It's great for them to turn the car around, and we'll just see where they end up. But yeah, very positive. And obviously, Nico, you give him half a chance with a good car. He never disappoints, does he?
Yeah, no.
You can discount him when he's driving a bad car on a bad day, but if you give him half a chance, he's right in there, and
he's in there. Yeah, he's a terrific driver. Always has been. It's just. Alonso said, I'm the unluckiest driver. No, not really. I think Nico's more unlucky than you.
Yeah. I mean, think how long ago he could have had a top ride and that you just got passed over. But I think, if he hadn't have been passed over, it could have been a whole different world for Nico Hülkenberg.
Yeah, I really wanted him to go, was it McLaren that was looking at it? It was a little too McLaren, tall, which I thought was BS.
Yeah. Isn't that when Magnussen went instead?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah. I think maybe. Yeah, around that time. Yeah, I think so. But I've been a Nico fan for a long time, and he's a good guy. Teammate Gabriel Bortoleto, his race is kind of really undone by an early stop. The team boxed him on lap 13 to put him on mediums, looking at a potential one stop, and then they took an aggressive strategy looking for points. But unfortunately, that risk didn't really pay off. He fought pretty hard to try to recover, and he finished where he started. I mean, I would say it wasn't a miserable weekend. He finished where he started, but I think the strategy was just super aggressive to try to get in there. Didn't quite pay out for him, but I don't think it was because he wasn't pushing. I think he had a good race. It just doesn't really reflect it in the points.
Yeah, I think he does pretty good. I think they should be pretty happy with his driving and everything. And he didn't get the result Hülkenberg did, but the situation was different. Yeah, and once he gets in there, he makes some good passes. He's doing some fine things. He's got a lot to learn, obviously. Still, it's his first year. So yeah, I
agree. Racing Bulls, Isaac Hadjar P7, Liam Lawson P11. Hadjar delivered another impressive performance, finishing 7th, scoring points for the 4th time in 5 races, which is terrific. Started in the top 10, avoided all the chaos around him, overtook Gasly early on, despite losing a place to Hülkenberg at the safety car restart. Had a very composed drive, looked great out there, just executing, perfectly. And it's just continuing, Paul, to build that reputation as a real standout rookie, which is very deserving.
Yeah, yes. It's everyone's surprised, even the people that hired him, is how good he's been performing in there. You don't really know how someone's going to step up because, the F2 series is a bit foggy to expose pure talent. Yeah. Right? But he's exceeded everyone's expectations, and we just don't want him to get ruined and sent straight up to Red Bull if Yuki's still struggling, right? We don't want to ruin that guy. They should just sell down, leave him there for a couple of years,
Yeah. Let him get embedded and all that. Teammate Liam Lawson down in P11. Lawson was in the thick of the action, battling aggressively, but finishing just outside of the points. He collided with Albon during an overtake and later attempted a similar move on Behrman, falling short. But the 3 instances he was in, I contribute one of them as his fault, and the other two were Alex and Ollie's fault, if I'm honest. That's how I saw it. I think Liam, on one shot, dive bombed Behrman. That was ill-advised, and it wasn't a good move on his part. I think he was frustrated and tried to dive down in there. That's, mea culpa, that's on Liam. But the other two weren't his fault. I think those were Alex and Ollie's fault. They opted not to pit him into the safety car. Going for that track position, Paul, that left him on older tires. Alonso overtook him late, dropping him down to 11th, almost in the points. To be fair to the team, they've had 3 Q3 appearances and 3-point finishes in the last 3 races, or in this triple header anyway. So it's a good result for them in balance.
Yeah, overall in balance. And, I don't think it was the worst race for Lawson at all.
Yep.
He's always feisty in his passing maneuvers and all this kind of stuff, and he's probably, next to Max, probably the most one that everyone keeps a keen eye on how he managed to get by, or if there's contact and everything. But I agree that 1 out of the 3 was him, the other 2 were the opposing driver. So but he's doing a fine job. I think he obviously got a bout of confidence at Monaco.
For sure,
wasn't driving horrible there. Hadjar is kind of over exceeding expectations, but I think Lawson's kind of finally settling down there a little bit, and I think more points are in the offing pretty soon for him.
Yeah, I think so. I think he'll go from strength to strength. Alpine, Pierre Gasly, P8, Franco Colapinto, P15. Gasly's race was a bit of a roller coaster. He's kind of back and forth, held his starting position to score points. Early pit stop for soft, followed by mediums. He climbed back into the top 10. Fresh tires after the safety car certainly helped. Couldn't fend off Hadjar, though, and then finished 8th. Alpine's points haul, though, wasn't enough to prevent them from slipping to last in the constructors because of Sauber's big day finishing P5. So, despite Pierre trying his heart out, they couldn't keep themselves from losing that spot to Sauber, which is brutal.
Yeah, got to be brutal for Briatore, right? Really start winning races next year. It's like, woo, I have some work to do. But Gasly still does a great job, and it's still a competitive run.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
If you don't have the second car backing you up, it's going to be hard to get any points enough to beat everybody. But yeah, I mean, as we saw last year with the Alpine, you have one good race and you get a big points haul. It makes a big difference in that battle.
Does.
Because the points aren't that easily had. So if you get something in the middle of the top 10, that causes a big swing in the points, and we'll see more of that. We're only a third of the way through the season so far, so.
Well, this could have been Sauber's big Brazil moment of Alpine last year, when they had that great result. And that
was massive, right? I mean,
huge.
I think the constructors was flattered a little bit by one race for that team. They've still got more work to do, but they're still a lot better than I think. As we continue from race to race, the Gasly at least is always in the points hunt.
Yeah, I agree. For Colapinto, gained a few places from his P19 qualifying, but couldn't really break into the points. Of course, his race was steady, uneventful, relatively clean laps. Probably some good experience for him. Getting used to the car and different tracks. I would say that he showed progress in general. Coming up 4 spots, but you had some retirements. Alpine's lack of pace here, it was just really the bigger impact on him, and to be fair, I think in Pierre losing that spot to Hadjar. But you got to wonder at this point, though, is Flavio thinking, is Colapinto doing much more than Jack would have at this point?
Well, he's definitely not.
Yeah,
he's definitely not come in with the same furor and pace, quite honestly, as he did when he jumped into Williams.
Yeah, right. Right.
Where he starts scoring points right off the bat. He's not appearing anything special right now. And I know he's got a lot of support, a lot of angry support apparently. And we'll just have to see where that goes. I mean, he did have some good runs last year, but we haven't seen it in the Alpine, and it's a different environment. We talked about it before that,
different pressure.
Basically, yeah, but they hired new people in the team just when Colapinto arrived. Were they the right people? Is the team still trying to gel? Still trying to figure it all out? So I don't know what the problem is, but Pierre is the litmus test for him, and he's not close.
Yeah.
And Doohan was closer, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt like Doohan was too. Let's see, Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso P9. Alonso salvaged points on home soil, which was good. Tough race for him, though. Had that gravel trap excursion early on. It cost him some position. Not sure what happened there, but he fought back, capitalized on Lawson and Behrman's battles, made his way around. Safety car was a bit of a lifeline. He got fresh tires on there. That allowed him to gain 3 places. I mean, once that safety car happened, Paul, he had the bit between his teeth, didn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he was going at it, and then he ends up securing P9 with Max's penalties. So great to see him claw some points on home turf. That was good. His first points of 2025. Bit of a morale boost for him. Personally, I would say at his home Grand Prix. It was a good race for Fernando. If I'm honest, I kind of felt like he'd do better because given where he qualified and the pace he was having in free practice, I thought Aston would do better.
I did too, actually. I think as much as it's a boost to get your points, it's not really not really going to boost you that much. In the moment, maybe he's happy, he's got points in front of his, he's not languishing at the back, but it's not really where he wanted to be or should be. I feel like it was great to see him fight. He gets up for these Spanish races or wherever. He's very emotional, Alonso, and he's very much, here we go, everybody, follow me. I've got the cape on, and I think maybe it was a bit. He let that get away from him a little bit at the beginning and made some moves that in the end, it was fun to watch. It was great to watch. But in the end, probably wasn't the right decisions to make to actually get your best finish. I think he was saying he was taking big risk. I'm not sure he needed to take that bigger risk. I think the car was a little bit better in the end, and I think it probably hurt him in the end. But I did enjoy the fights. We like the fight like bull, Alonso, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Not fighting would be Lance Stroll. He had a DNS. I'm not sure what exactly is going on here, if I'm honest, Paul.
Yeah.
It's a different category, Paul. He withdrew before the race, leaving Aston Martin with only one car to start the race. Yeah. My immediate thought was, I read the press release, and the press release said that he'd been struggling over the last 6 weeks with his hand, that he'd had surgery on. He was having pain in it, and that's what the press release said. And I thought to myself, well, then why wouldn't they have made that call after FP1 if he was still struggling and it was hurting, so they could get Felipe Drugovich in the car for qualifying and try to get some more points and at least have 2 cars out there. Right. And it didn't make sense to me why they would do that. And I thought, okay, well, let's give benefit of the doubt. Let's just say Lance is a fierce competitor and really, is discomfort after practice, but he wanted to try to qualify and see he could do it. And then just after qualifying, the pain was too much or whatever it was. I was trying to give benefit of the doubt, but then I was reading some comments and some stories, and these may not be true. This could be all speculation, but there was some comments that I was reading that there was a tantrum that was thrown in the garage after qualifying, because after qualifying, they penalized him because he didn't go in for a weigh-in when he got out of the car. Well, why wouldn't he go to a weigh-in? Well, because he had to go and get, his hand, he had pain. Attention. Yeah. Well, I know, but you said he's been having pain for 6 weeks. Could he not just go stand on the scales and then go? Why? Yeah. I don't understand. So there were some comments that he threw a tantrum after qualifying and injured his hand. It was self-inflicted. I haven't read anything, but I haven't read anything from the team saying
hurt his hand while throwing the tantrum.
Yeah, that's what I read. And I don't know, this is all the fun drama and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I just think the whole thing's a little, even if all that's BS and that didn't happen, and Lance legit got out of the car and his hand's hurting, and he said, I can't do it, and he said, the hell with it. Well, I don't know. I just feel like that's an expensive. I mean, at what point does that team think about the team and not Lance, because he's the owner's son? Nothing against Lance. I'm just saying, if Lance isn't doing well and his wrist is bothering him, then somebody in the team should have said, okay, but wait a minute. if that's the case, let's not hang this out in qualifying. And if he can't make it, we don't have two cars in the race.
Yeah.
I mean, all the men and women working on Lance's car, just sit around and eat, ice cream, because we're trying to maximize points here in a Constructors' Championship. And so I can't get my head around any of this is what I'm struggling with.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no intel.
Yeah.
But you would think if you were having long-term issues, they have the option of running Drogovic in free practice one.
Yeah.
Right? Why not just have him around, get him some seat time,
yeah,
and give Lawson a break. And, it's not like they need to learn this track. They've been at it many, many years and many, many, many laps, right? He doesn't need to learn it. So if there's an ongoing issue, you would think they could be more prepared for that for sure.
Well, I would think, Paul, that Cadillac would like to know if he's going to be racing in Canada, because he's slated to be at Le Mans with Cadillac, Drogovic. So
right.
They'd better tell him so he can let Cadillac know that they got to find somebody else if he's going to be called up. I mean, I'm sure the team will do that.
That's a really good point. And quite honestly, if that is the issue, you can't imagine that Drogovic will be allowed to do Le Mans, because if it's the issue with his hand and they're hoping, and he's had an operation now, and they're hoping it will be good for Canada. Hope is not a plan, as Grace likes to say, and you've got to be prepared for all eventualities, and Drogovic would be the next best choice in the Aston, and you don't want to see another Aston sitting in the garage when the Grand Prix starts again.
No, you wouldn't. And if I'm Drogovic, I'm thinking of Felipe here. I don't want to sit around twiddling my thumb and be on call and be forced to miss Le Mans.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand I'm privileged and I'm very honored to be the reserve driver for Aston Martin. Don't get me wrong, but let's make a decision. Either I'm going to drive, because don't deny me my opportunity to go with Cadillac and try to win Le Mans,
Yeah, but in truth, if he's going to do whatever, if there's even a 10% chance he's going to be in the Formula One Grand Prix,
he'll do it.
Take that.
Yeah. No, I agree. All right, now we get to Red Bull. Max Verstappen P10, Yuki Tsunoda P13. Max's race was action-packed, but ended in disappointment. He overtook Norris at the start, couldn't match McLaren's pace, though, switching to the three-stop strategy, and it looked good for a podium in my mind, possibly. Then the safety car came out. At the safety car restart, all he had left was hard tires. And he collided with Leclerc, which was the first insult and the first, let's just say, the first straw, right? Mm-hmm. So the first straw was getting clouded by Leclerc, losing the place to Leclerc, and the steward's not, asking Leclerc to cede the position. Then he got clouded by Russell into the corner. And as Russell lost the front of his car, clouded, forced him wide, Russell gets this, then Russell backs off. Max goes to the escape road, holds a position, right? And then the team tell him, cede the position to Russell. And in Max's mind, he's like, wait a minute. I got mugged by Leclerc down the straight. I'm in the turn. George just lifted and, lost the front, clouded me right in the side. Yeah. Why am I ceding position to this guy? So he's pissed off. He's mad, right? But then everything unravels when they tell him to see the position, and he comes around. And it looks like he's slowing up to let George by. George comes around him. They head into the left-hander. I think he just took his foot off the brake and ran into the front left wheel of George. He's like, okay, well, my thinking was, well, he was just showing him what George did to him, I guess. I don't know. But, clearly it would on the outside looking at it, Paul, it seemed like an absolute red mist moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would absolutely say he got the frustration, went to the max, pardon the pun, but and not acceptable to do that.
Yeah.
We got to. Whatever Russell did, he didn't do an egregious maneuver that deserved, that kind of reaction.
And it wasn't intentional.
Yeah, and I think Max was frustrated by the team's call.
I think so.
On the tire. Obviously, he did an amazing save not to just destroy that car.
He did.
Great. And then the contact with Leclerc. That's not enough to really send you into spins. But then I think compounded. I would think it was more to do with the tire. He felt like he was in a very safe third position. Now he's fighting his way to the back of the pack at this point on the hard tire. And George bumps into him, and then in his mind, I mean, Max always thinks he deserves to win.
Yep.
And deserves the position he feels he's capable of that weekend. And that's in his head, and that's what makes him champion. Doesn't make him always a likable person, but definitely has been a lot more positive for his results than not.
For sure. Yeah.
And
but it makes him an aggressive driver. He's very aggressive.
Yeah, and everyone knows what they're dealing with, Max, and they know you've always got to be careful, and that works out for him as well. And sometimes it's ended up with him on top of another car, but in the long scheme of things, it's given him the width and given the latitude from the other drivers to perform and get better results.
Yeah.
And it happened back in the day with Senna and Mansell and those guys. They wouldn't give each other an inch. They ended up colliding a lot, but in the end, it works out for them because people will get the hell out of the way when they see him coming because they know they're not going to give him anything, right? And they don't mind running into somebody if they need to.
Right.
So you can say that makes him a horrible driver or a bad driver or whatever, but the truth is the truth that in any sport, you fight to make room for yourself and you fight to give yourself the respect from the other people and make people maybe a little afraid of you or, give you a bit of extra room to you rather than some other people that maybe aren't as strong.
Right.
So I definitely don't think that's a bad side for Max, and it's made him successful. The team, he's had a lot of calls against him, and I think the team took that into consideration when they made that call. It was a bad call, obviously, from them. I think the hard tire call was an interesting one because I think it's also got to do with what Max can do. It's like Max has done magical things in certain situations that you weren't expecting. And I
would have thought they'd have just kept him out there on slightly used softs.
Absolutely.
He wouldn't have held off the McLarens, but it could have been a podium.
No, we already saw that's kind of where he was headed. They made a great strategy and a great fight to even stay in the hunt.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately the McLarens were always going to beat them. And so I think the idea of Max is in the car, let's just throw hard. Maybe he can do something magical again. I think it was a bridge too far on that call.
Especially given the deltas between the tire compounds and knowing that he was on hards at a restart behind a safety car.
Yeah. And
didn't have any room to heat those up.
Yeah. If everyone was on 30-lap tires, maybe it would have been better. And there wasn't a long enough time left in the race for him to get the heat and get anything out of those hard tires anyway, enough to actually make any gains. He ended up losing, obviously. And it's really going to affect. I mean, it's going to have a knock-on effect for Max for the rest of the year at this point. The penalty points add on.
Yeah, you got 3-point hit on his license.
He's going to have to race different. The team's going to have to coach him different in the races. And also, his competitors can race him different because they know where he's at.
They know, yeah.
Right?
There's a vulnerability there.
There's a vulnerability that they can maybe be a bit cheeky with Max where they couldn't in the past because he wouldn't have let it happen. That now has to drive, a bit more controlled. So
I think Lando would be the first guy to take advantage of that vulnerability.
Yeah, he's going to love it, right? I mean, Max is basically, under the chopping block for missing a race and getting banned. And, it's a big lesson for Max not to, it's interesting because these guys all raced against each other in karts.
Yeah.
And I was thinking the other day, it's really like they're still racing karts. They're racing $1 million cars.
Multi-million-dollar
cars. Racing in the same way they raced against each other in cars.
I know.
Yeah, it's like it's quite funny to me to think of it that way, but they really are.
They
just
are
a different car, but they're driving the same. They drive each other the same. They bump into each other the same way. They yell at each other the same way after the race.
Yeah,
it's quite a thing that we've never really seen before, where all this group came from racing each other from the ground up. When Senna came, Prost had been racing. He'd never raced him in the lower ranks, but they basically
Schumacher came. Senna had been racing. Yeah,
right. They all came up at the ranks at the same time. They've all been given chances because of the team they ended up with to being really successful or struggling. and now they're kind of all coming to the fill here. So it's I don't know how they really get along as well as they seem to.
They get along well, other than George and Max. I think the rest of them get along pretty well. But and this is what I always think. People say, "Oh, it's Lewis versus Max." It's not. Lewis is the Alonso generation, Vettel generation, Carlos, this is all about Max and Charles and Pierre and,
George
and Lando.
Literally all
they're all the same generation.
Fantastic.
It is fantastic. I absolutely love it, watching it. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
But bottom line is, you can't have red mist. You can't lift. You can't just ram your. I mean, Vettel did the same thing to Lewis. Remember in Baku, he thought he brake checked him. He went around and just drove into the side of him. The stewards gave him a 10-second penalty. That's what they gave Max here, and I'm assuming there's precedent there. If it was deliberate, he got a 10-second penalty. That's what they gave Max, but they docked him 3 points. I
think the penalty should have been harsher, honestly.
Yep.
You think it was blatant?
Rosberg is saying he should have been black flagged and disqualified.
Yeah, I don't think that, but I think the penalty shouldn't be the same as track limit penalty or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of people get 10-second penalties for things that are a lot less than that, but I definitely think
maybe a drive-through.
Yeah, absolutely. At minimum, I would say.
Yeah. That would have dragged him out of the points.
Yeah, which is fine.
Which would probably have been good.
I think that definitely the penalty should have been harsher. It wasn't, but the penalty points are harsh too.
Yeah, the penalty points are harsh.
I'd say that's gonna carry on from race after race. A drive-through would only be the race would be done, right? You lost your 1 point that you gained, whatever.
Right.
It's going to affect his points tally for a while.
Right. Agreed. Yuki started from pit lane, struggled to make any progress. His pace was off. Really a lackluster race. Saw him finish outside of the points. Tough weekend for him. Couldn't replicate Verstappen's competitiveness basically all weekend. It makes you wonder if Red Bull should be having a conversation about that second seat again, given they fell another place in the title hunt in the Constructors' Championship. And at this point, they're just bleeding cash due to the second car not running in the points, let alone winning. Yeah. I mean, nobody has any expectations of Yuki winning races, but just getting in the points to help the team, right? This is, it's the same.
Would be good.
Yeah, and it's the same question I have about the Lance and Aston thing. You don't have 2 cars in there to even try to maximize points, But I don't know. On the other hand, they probably know that they're pretty much a grinding mill, and they don't want to ruin Hadjar like they did Liam, Alex, Pierre, and others. So maybe they just keep Yuki around for the balance of the year, then they can just say we're dumping him on merit, and then, call Isaac.
I mean, I heard something that the team said they got the setup wrong or something on his car in the qualifying.
Oh, that could be. Well, that's odd, but yeah.
It is odd, but we did say that it seems Red Bull can't run a second car. I mean, to me, Yuki's not that far off of Max that it showed in this race.
Agreed. I don't think Yuki's that slow at all. I agree.
He's not that slow.
No.
The car was competitive enough, and it's not like Yuki doesn't know the track.
Yeah.
So I'm going to blame this one on the team. You can always blame a little bit, 2/10 or whatever on Yuki if you want, if he's not quite there on the weekend or whatever. We know he's a few tenths off of Max, but not the chasm that was this weekend. So I think the team is getting stuff wrong still on that side of the garage.
Yeah. I mean, the car has the pace to be in the points.
Yeah. I mean, I know, I honestly, I'd put Bottas in there, but because he's a known quantity.
He is a known quantity.
But, he's obviously tied to Mercedes and all this kind of stuff.
True.
But, I don't know. I said, I don't think it's all a Yuki problem. I still think it's a Red Bull problem.
No, for sure.
So,
let's see, Williams, Carlos Sainz P14, Albon DNF. Sainz, pretty much a nightmare home race for him. Both him and Alex having wing damage on lap 1. That hurt. First lap contact damaged his front wing. Slow pit stop dropped him to the back despite continuing. Couldn't recover. Finish outside of the points for the first time in Spain for him, which is tough. Disappointing day for him. I'd like to see, the Spanish Armada with him and Alonso finishing nose to tail. But it was hard for him to shine at home, quite like Alonso did. So disappointing race. And I mean, there's not much to talk about Alex. I'll just throw this in. You can talk about Carlos, but Alex had that contact at the start, forced an early stop. Then he had that collision with Lawson that caused further damage again, got a 10-second penalty. They boxed the car, and it was over. Miserable weekend.
I think they probably ran out of noses.
Yeah, they may have. May have.
I mean, it's
so.
like you're not going to gain anything at that point, and probably best to do that, keep within the rules, but with the penalty, I think they just served the penalty just so it doesn't carry over, which is kind of a silly
that
rule.
was a heads-up move.
Yeah, but not competitive weekend for them. Hopefully, it was just an anomaly for them because they've been so good this year so far.
Yeah, they have. Even less competitive was Haas. He had Esteban Ocon P16, Ollie Behrman P17. Ocon's two-stop medium tire strategy didn't really work. Stayed out during the safety car, hoping for some track position. Struggled to get heat in the tires post-restart. Got overtaken by multiple drivers. Dropped down to 16th. Just a lack of pace. You could argue they were poor strategic calls. Pretty much a forgettable race for Esteban, really. And what a difference a week makes, right?
Yeah, right.
Wow.
Yeah. Maybe maybe there's something to do with this Mercedes thing. I don't know, because obviously, like-minded with the Williams, they struggled here.
Yeah.
Mercedes weren't brilliant. Aston were mediocre, so I don't know if it's something to do with how they got their cars set up, the engines, the rear suspension, which they all kind of share, I believe, with the Mercedes car. But nothing great came out of the Haas this weekend, unfortunately.
No. Ollie, he had some promise. He climbed to the edge of the points, decent start, got a 10-second penalty for getting advantage off track. In that Lawson incident, that dropped him back and out of sight of the points. And then the safety car regrouped the whole field back up, but that 10-second penalty dropped him further back, and that left him in P17. So not a lot to talk about there. Let's give out some awards. We do that. The first award we like to give out is something that we like to call Move of the Race. And for Move of the Race, Paul, what'd you have?
Well, there's a lot of moves out there.
Yep.
Good and bad, right?
Yep.
But as said before, I kind of like the Alonso outside passes. I know there was, he was a little aggressive. It maybe didn't work out in his favor. Maybe it wasn't the right thing to do at the time. But I just loved his gumption, and Alonso just grabs everything by the scruff of the neck and tries to make something happen,
Yeah, it's great. I agree. My move of the race was the whole Leclerc, Russell, Verstappen debacle, because that pretty much unraveled.
A positive thing,
yeah, pretty much unraveled the whole race,
Yeah.
So that was my move.
I mean, the move of the race could have been the Red Bull strategy, except for that last one.
Yeah. It could have been
fighting on the McLaren's heels.
Yeah, it could have been. Unfortunately. All right. Well, the next award we always give out is Donkey of the Race. Oh boy, Paul, what'd you have?
Well, as they say, you live with the team and you have success with the team and you take this point with the team. I'm giving it to everybody at Red Bull, including Max Verstappen, for just making just a diabolical race and ending to it, and they all helped each other make these bad decisions.
They did.
Quite honestly, and they can't get mad at either one of each other. They just all be mad at themselves. But the strategy calls, the let him pass, the tire call, Max losing his temper and making a bonehead move onto Russell. Just a disaster of a weekend for them in the end.
Yeah, it really was. That was such a ragged. That's what I had was Red Bull. It just ham-fisted move. You can't do that. And in the end, and I agree with it. It was the whole team. If you think about it, if they got Yuki's car wrong, that's an issue. Right. If they got, Max, and then Max gets slapped by Leclerc, he gets slapped by George, and the team says, "Oh, we're gonna slap you too. Here, pull over." And he's like, "What the hell?" And then he goes off red mist and dives into George. So the whole thing is just a very ragged weekend on balance for Red Bull. I agree with you. That was my donkey of the race as well. And then finally, we like to hand out Drive of the Race.
Echt in there, Lewis. You like my bass? You like it?
Yeah, we do. What'd you have?
I got Hulkenberg.
I have Hulkenberg too. How could it not be?
How can it not be?
I thought it was hilarious as F1's vote it was Max.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny. No, it got to be Nico. My gosh.
Yeah.
That was great.
Great run for that team. It was great to see them buoyant.
Loved it.
You know?
Yes. They needed that. You know, they needed a spark of.
Yeah, they've definitely been the doormat for quite a while now.
They have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I was real happy. Even Bernardo came down and into the interview pit and congratulated Nico, so he was pretty happy.
Yeah, good for them.
So it was good for them. All right, finally, let's do a mailbag.
You've got mail.
Domenico asks. He said, "You're kind enough to take my question on the podcast, so let me double down with a second question. Here's this question, Paul: how do teams go about deciding how much to fill up the cars these days? On tracks that are not fuel limited, there must be a trade-off, especially when track position is key. Surely the teams must have thought about this, but it occurred to me that Leclerc could have had a very light car, used it to jump Norris at the start, and then dictate how slow." A slow enough pace to finish the race. Probably not that simple, though, right? What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, definitely not that simple with multiple pit stops.
Yep.
Right? I mean, you can't. It's not like Monaco where you can just get in front and hold everybody up. There's too many opportunities to pass out here.
Mm-hmm.
There's never a track that isn't fuel limited. You always know a certain amount of fuel, and teams definitely do under fuel to a limit, and then save the fuel at the end of the race if they need to, but they definitely try and start as light as they can, and something they'll get away with. Sometimes, if on the data it says, okay, we start with this many liters, we'll actually run out with 2 laps to go. They always fudge that in and say, okay, well, there'll just have to be a bit of fuel save in the middle of the race to catch our fuel up with the last lap of the race.
Right.
So they're all doing it. Some cars are more thirsty than others, so some have to start heavier than others as well.
Right.
Some have more drag and more fuel.
Don't ask me, because I'm the guy out here still waving the flag that we should do away with HD tires DRS and bring back refueling. Because refueling, really, come on, you guys get excited about a 1.8 pit stop, 1.8 second pit stop. It's gone. Okay, whatever. Yeah. But when you got to go in, you could short fuel that car in the beginning, put it on super softs and run like hell and run different strategies, and then, play with that fuel, that weight, which, impacts the balance of the car. I just think there's more, issues. Paul, you refuel on stops.
Yeah, we do.
You figured it out. It's not a big risk. You're not burning up, humans in the pits.
No.
You guys do it. It plays a serious impact on how your strategy is played out, on how much fuel you load, who's driving what. It's a huge factor in your strategy.
Massive factor.
Yeah. And it would be an F1, right? And so if you made really good tires, if Pirelli were allowed to make the kind of tire that they can make, that were super grippy and would last a long time, or make 2 different tires, maybe one's super grippy, the other one's a little less grippy but lasts a little longer, and then not worry about running HD tires and degradation rates and deg rates and all that crap. Make a real racing tire like Michelin does in your series, and then bring back refueling, and you have 8, 9 second, 10-second pit stops. There's a lot to be lost and gained there.
No, it can be exciting for sure.
Yep. All right. That's my rant. Sorry.
Okay.
All right. Paul's like, whatever. You're probably like, well, maybe you should be watching more IMSA and Le Mans and less F1 if that's what you want to see, because we do that every weekend.
Every weekend.
Yeah, you do.
The pit stops crucial for fuel,
right.
for sure. Yeah.
Right. And then you got random drivers that are jumping in. It even
and
makes it more difficult.
We don't have 25 people doing the pit stop either.
Right, you don't.
I still think F1, even if they're just going to do tire stops, need to halve the amount of people able to actually function.
How many people can be over your wall?
2 changing tires,
Okay.
One fueler. Right?
Okay.
And then one person is allowed to
do
run
the
around the car and hold the tires. And
hold the tires. Okay.
Right. So two guns.
Yeah.
One guy throws the wand on, raises the car, runs around, tries to help the tire guys with pulling the old tires off or giving them the new tire, and then the fueler. And
gotcha.
it takes a little longer, but I think it's better. I think
it is.
8-second pit stop with less people, I think, be more. You can actually see the pit stop happening.
Yeah, you would.
Here it's just like you get one little cog out of line. It's like, oh, it's a disaster. It's like,
Right. I agree. But don't ask me. All right. Well, that does it. That's what we think about the Spanish Grand Prix. You let us know what you think about it. You can do that by going to theparkforme.com and sharing your opinion with decorum and civility. As always, a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters, because we literally could not do and would not do this podcast if it wasn't for you. So thank you so much for your support. Don't forget, we got merch out there with the new logos if you want to wear that. And we will be back. Now, Paul is going to be a little bit of hiatus, folks. Just going to give you a little heads up. Here's a little programming note. Paul, it's an off race weekend next weekend. Grace will be back. But Paul can't do the Canadian Grand Prix review. You know why? Because he's going to be racing at Le Mans. That's why he can't do that. So Grace is going to be sitting in for Paul, and that actually will drop, I think, late Sunday night of the Canadian Grand Prix and not Monday. So anyway... just a little programming note. But, Paul...
Enjoy it, though.
Yes, enjoy it. Paul, wishing you all the luck at Le Mans and at Watkins.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And, so go out there and give them hell. And I can't wait to talk to you once you get back from Le Mans. That'll be exciting.
Hopefully I can get on the track and do a little track.
Yes, do a track walk if you can.
I just don't know. I haven't even looked at the schedule to see how that all works out. I'll try and do something.
Okay. That would be awesome. So cool. All right. Well, until next time we do it all over again, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camera, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.